Ahmed Abdullahi, a former East Grand Forks resident, has now been sentenced to 60 years in prison with 25 suspended here in Grand Forks County District Court. He's to serve 35 years in prison for the murder of Megan Gustafson in September of last year in Grand Forks. For background on this case, here's our story from last September.
A Class AA charge of murder has been filed against Ahmed Abdullahi in that early Sunday morning shooting in Grand Forks. The victim has been identified as Megan Gustafson. According to the criminal complaint, quote, on September 12th at approximately 1:32 a.m., officers from the Grand Forks Police Department were dispatched to an apartment. This is on the 1300 block of 8th Avenue North for suspicious activity call in regard to a separate investigation. When officers arrived, they knocked on the apartment door and spoke to Megan Gustafson. Officers then walked away. Shortly thereafter, an argument could be heard coming from inside the residence. The front door opened. Megan Gustafson was observed inside the apartment door with her back toward the street. Ahmed Abdullahi was observed in the door facing Megan Gustafson. An officer heard a single gunshot in the direction of Megan Gustafson and Ahmed Abdullahi. Officers heard Megan Gustafson scream and then observed her run into the lawn and fall to the ground. Abdullahi walked out of the apartment holding a handgun in his hand. Officers were able to secure and detain Abdullahi. He was in possession of a Taurus 9mm handgun, which was reported stolen from a vehicle in Grand Forks in September of 2020. Officers observed Megan Gustafson to have a gunshot wound to her chin, neck area. Officers began life-saving measures. Megan Gustafson was transported to Altru Hospital, where she was later pronounced deceased. Now, today in court, several family members and friends made victim statements before sentencing. Here's some of that.
Why is the state's attorney not offering such high sentence deals that they won't take it so it can go to trial? Like in the case of the murdered police officer. His killer got life without parole, which he deserved. Is Megan's life worth any less? It seems like that's what the state thinks. So, Your Honor, I'm asking you and I'm begging you to throw this deal out and give Megan the justice she deserves, especially for her daughter, Olivia, who has to grow up without her mom. This murderer deserves no less than life without parole.
But we never get to do anything with her anymore except go to a graveyard and see her. I see you every night killing my granddaughter. Every night I watch it. And I've told everybody it doesn't go away. You understand that? It doesn't go away.
I miss her. I think about her. I wish she was still here. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I did. I wish I could bring your daughter back. Well, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
And you're asked who is affected most by what has happened. And your answer was you, because you're in jail and you have to think about it.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, that's what's in the report.
Okay, but I didn't say that.
Not the man whose car he stole, not the man who you held up at gunpoint, not the woman who is now dead, not her family, not the 9-year-old who is never going to see her mom again. And I've read a lot of pre-sentence investigation reports. That's one of the most preposterous things I've ever seen. For you to think that. And so I agree with the family when they say it feels like you haven't shown any remorse. I don't punish people just because they don't show remorse. That's not one of the sentencing factors, but I can consider your attitude and history, whether I consider whether or not you're unlikely to commit another crime and whether or not the result is of circumstances not likely to reoccur. And from what I see in the pre-sentence investigation report, your attitude would not support the court making a finding that these things are unlikely to reoccur. I'm not sure if you understand what you did fully, sir. I mean, I know you understand where you're at and what's happening, but I'm not sure you understand what you took away from those people. They're never, ever going to get that person back, ever. You've got a history of criminal conduct That's only been increasing since you turned 18. Terroristic threats, obstruction of law enforcement, multiple convictions for disorderly conduct, simple assault, theft, another assault, theft, terrorizing, fleeing from law enforcement, at least 2 probation revocations in North Dakota and Minnesota. You've been in domestic violence programming in the past. You were kicked out because you didn't follow through with that. This whole thing is just senseless and just more violence. And I am not granting your request to deviate downward from the plea agreement. There's no chance I'm doing that. When I look through these factors, every one of them supports the plea agreement that was reached, the proposed sentence. Your conduct certainly caused serious harm. There's no way you could not understand that walking around with a gun and attempting to rob someone and then running to somebody's house would cause or could cause serious harm to that person. There was no provocation for you to do this. There were no legal grounds which would justify your conduct. You can say you were drunk and stoned, but that's not an excuse for doing anything like this. Not an excuse for doing anything, frankly, but in particular, not acting this way and doing the things you did. There's no way you can make restitution to this family, even with the agreed upon amount of restitution. That's nothing. It's nothing to them. You're never going to give them back what they have lost. I've already talked about your prior history and your attitude, which would indicate to the court the opposite, that it's unlikely that you would commit another crime. Do not respond well to probation. You've already been on probation and your probation's been revoked twice. There's really no mitigating factors here that would support me making a downward departure. So the issue really is whether or not I accept the plea agreement as is proposed, despite the fact that the family would like to see you go away forever and never get out again. And I understand why the family is asking for that. Thing is, there's nothing I can ever say or do that's going to give you folks back what you lost. And I don't say that lightly. I really don't. But there's nothing that I'm going to do that's going to feel like justice for you. And I know that. There's value in having the case closed in the sense that everybody doesn't have to live through a trial and relive what happened again. I'm certain the state has considered the evidence that they have and what they can present and what would be presented at trial and any possible defenses that the defendant may have. No doubt they have an understanding of what evidence they can provide to the court. I have to note as well that the proposed plea agreement is consistent with, or perhaps even a bit more severe than, other similar cases. Now, I realize there are some cases where people get life and some cases where people get 5 years. I understand that. But the proposal is generally consistent with sentences that are handed down for a case like this. And again, I realize that's no consolation to anybody because your world was shattered. I understand that. And I'm going to accept the terms of the plea agreement. I'm going to sentence according to it. I want you to understand, Mr. Abdullahi, and I'm sure your attorney has advised you of this, and I believe I went through it with you when you entered your guilty plea. You will have to serve 85% of the sentence imposed in this case before you would even be eligible for parole. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And there are minimum mandatory sentences on the murder charge and the robbery charge. They're 4 years. They're far eclipsed by what the plea agreement is, but just so you're aware, they're in there. You understand that as well?
Yes, sir.
In case number 18-2021 CR 2047, count 1, sentence will be 60 years with the North Dakota Department of Corrections with 25 years suspended.
What's your reaction to the sentence?
I don't agree with it. You know, he should get life without parole. I mean, really, he should be dead, but,
Yeah.
you know.
All right. Well, they did say, what, mid-50s he gets out and then deported.
That's what they say, but I just don't agree with it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's, you know, he got chance after chance after chance. He got slapped on the wrist every time. And to me, this is just another slap on the wrist. He should get life without parole. There's no...
I'm Neil Carlson reporting for iNewZ.TV.